Good morning, everybody. The lesson today will be held by Francesco Bona, PhD student in information engineering at our lab. The focus would be web technology, precisely HTML and CSS. These lessons for organizational reasons will end at 12. So it will be a condensed lecture. So thank you, Francesco, and have a nice lecture. Okay.
Thanks, Franca.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So, guys, Franca just introduced me. I'm Francesco, and in my work at the laboratory, I'm dealing with advanced user interface technologies such as virtual reality, mixed reality, and augmented reality. But I also do a lot of front-end coding, and I worked last year for a big platform that merges virtual reality and biosensors. So I have lots of interest in front-end development, and this is the reason I'm here today to explain you basic concepts of HTML and CSS. Why HTML and CSS are so important for you as a designer? Because in your work you mainly develop mockups or wireframe concepts in a way, and then you give all your idea, all your project to someone that is going to develop your idea. And often it happens that what the design has put inside a mockup or inside a wireframe, then it's not implemented in the front end. And this happened for two reasons. One reason is because the designer usually doesn't know so well HTML and CSS concepts, so imagine things that then cannot be applied or that are very hard to apply. And on the other end, we as a developer have our fault, because often we don't understand design principles. So there is a lack of knowledge from the two sides. And today we are going to, I hope that I'm going to fill a little bit this gap from your point of view. So this is the brief agenda for today. I don't know if you see my presentation. I think so. I just wrote. Do you see? Okay, thanks. Thanks. So this is the very brief agenda for today. I want just to introduce context and tool that you are going to use. Then I will introduce HTML, 5 questions on the HTML just to verify if you understand basic concepts. And then we can do a break, and then the CSS part with few questions also on this part. I put many examples, not so many, but plenty of examples inside these slides. So we often will switch from the presentation to websites to show you more things. So let's start. If I'm not wrong, what you are going to develop for this year project is a website that in a way shows your project, your idea. And usually this is the classical architecture of a website, of a web application. I guess that you saw this diagram in the previous lecture with Mattia, if I'm not wrong. By the way, this is a classical three-tier architecture. So there is a database, there is a server, and there is the client. In the client, usually we have the presentation layer, while on the server, the application layer, and on the database, the data layer. Today, we are focused on the front end. And in front end, we find several technologies, let's call this way, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then Bootstrap and jQuery that are some add-on features that can extend the power of these technologies. Today, we will focus on HTML and CSS, and we have another lesson together on the 8th of May, and we are going to see Bootstrap and a little bit of JavaScript. So modern front-end technologies are basically three, and there are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. I think that you studied JavaScript in other course of design, right? I will write on the chat how many of you knows JS. Let's do this. Thumbs up if you know the language, thumbs down if you don't know. So I put 3 questions. Okay, HTML, someone knows it. Also CSS. Okay, great. Ah, there isn't thumbs down. Oh, sorry. So you can use set face for thumbs down. So some of you just has a knowledge of these technologies. I will give you. I will start from the basic of these languages, and then I will show you some advanced feature also. I want to start with HTML, but before, let's see what is the behavior of this technology and what is their work inside a website. HTML and it's HTML5, the version that we are going to use, define the structural logic of the page. So HTML gives the structure. HTML is a kind of skeleton of the web page. Then we can add style to the skeleton, and we can add CSS. So CSS define the layout and the aesthetic of the page. But this is still there is no interaction in this way. We can do something, but there is no logic, and the user can interact very little with the website in this way. So we need also JavaScript, which is the programming language that it's used to bring interactivity. And then we have very useful framework for develop front-end website, which is Bootstrap. And we will see Bootstrap and JavaScript in the next lecture. These are some tools that that I suggest you to use in order to start coding something. Google Chrome, it's the browser I suggest. Also Mozilla is excellent, but usually I use Google Chrome. As text editor, since we are going to just write text and then add an extension to the file we are going to write, We can use simple text editor like Notepad if you have Windows, Sublime Text, but the two text editor that I suggest you are Brackets and Visual Studio Code, and both are available for Mac and for Windows. If you don't want to download plenty of programs, you can use an online tool, which is this one, and it's we will see then in the examples that I'm going to show you. But it's very useful because it divides your page in 3 columns: one for the HTML, one for the JS, one for the CSS. And there is then a horizontal row that show you the final output. So you can code, and WebStorm is also one of the best. You're right. But there are so many. You can also use Eclipse. I know that it's too much, but you can also use Eclipse. You can also use Visual Studio. I used WebStorm, but for example, I prefer Brackets to WebStorm, but it's personal preference. It's just personal preference. So these are the tools. For example, during the example that I'm going to show you, I will use Brackets. But yeah, if you have WebStorm and if you want to use it, you are free to use it because it's an excellent IDE. So let's start. What is HTML? HTML it's everywhere on the web. Every page you surf on the internet, it's an HTML page. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and here there are two important concepts to stress. The first one is the hypertext. Hypertext, hyper belongs from Greek, ancient Greek. It means beyond. It's not standing for big, but it stands for beyond. So it means something which is beyond the normal text. In fact, what we do when we use hypertext is to just click on a word and open a link that's open another document. In this image, it's clear what is the job of the hypertext. Today we talk of hypermedia and not only hypertext, because it's not just text. We have images, we have sounds, we have video, and so many format of document that it's not text. And the other elements that it's so important in the definition, in the name HTML, is the fact that it's a markup language. It's not a programming language, it's a markup language. It means that it's made of tag, and tag usually are enclosed in a square bracket and angular bracket, sorry, and these tags comes in pairs. Then we will see, of course, the ones of you that knows HTML knows how code a little bit in HTML, but this is also for the ones that don't know anything. So what is HTML for? With HTML, we indicate two tags, so to this angular bracket, which elements should appear on a screen, and now they should be arranged. All these indications are contained in the HTML document, and this HTML document is also called HTML page. And since HTML is a markup language and not a programming language, it does not have the construct proper to the programming. It means that you cannot use for loops, for example, or if statements. You cannot use while loops. It's simply language to express elements and to put elements inside a page. This is a brief history. about HTML. Next year, HTML will celebrate its 30th birthday. It was born in 1991 in Switzerland at CERN, and the man who started using this markup language was Tim Berners-Lee, the man that last year was on TV doing team advertising. I don't know if you have his face in mind. And in 1991, the first version of HTML was born. Then in 1995, we have the second specification of the language. In 1997, the W3C, which is the World Wide Web Consortium, which is like the organization behind the World Wide Web, took care of bringing the standard through the version HTML, the version 3, and then the version 4. The version 4 was very important because has been the version that supported the growth of the web in all the 20s. So this was really a thick version and a well-performing one also. And then we arrived at the final version of HTML, which is the one that we currently use, which is HTML5. HTML5 has been enriched with more attributes that allows to specify, which gives you a more intuitive syntax, let's say, and more APIs. These APIs allows the page, the browser, to interact with more elements inside the browser. Instead, before, the page has, let's say, less permissions. This was the really version that was created in a way to leave the web and become an application that become a language that can create also web application, which are more complex than simple websites. These are the 5 elements that HTML brings to us. HTML5. I just put this content here to show how HTML is evolved from a single markup language used to display only text on a page to something that can include 3D contents, audio and video, motion, different type of let's say style, and also the possibility to use the browser storage that it's not a big amount of space on your memory, but it's allows you to do lots of things and to reduce lots of work. So I spoke about this HTML. So let's see how to create a first HTML page. This is yeah, everybody see my bracket windows? I hope so. Okay, thanks. As you can see, I specified on top, on the first line, what kind of document is this. It's an HTML document, and the browser, just reading this, will understand that I'm using HTML5. Then I use the first tag to write HTML, and then inside this tag I put the head, the body, another tag which represents the title of the page, that is the one that we see on the top of the window of our browser, and then inside the body I just put a text. Let's see what happens if I open this document. Okay, as you can see, it's just an hello world. And if we open the console to see the element, we can see that there is this structure that was the same that was inside the bracket. So there is the head here with the title and the body and the text here inside. Then here there are some other, there is another container, but this is just created by bracket, the bracket tool of Live Preview. So we can close this and we saw our first HTML page. It's really simple. This is a code that you can easily find on internet. And the only thing you have to know is to copy and paste this code on an empty text file and then save it, changing the extension of the file from .txt to .html. In this way, if you save it and then you open it using your browser, it will display the HTML page. So, as one important thing when we develop and we create HTML pages, it's the browser. It's fundamental element in the programming line. And the browser is the program that interprets the markup of our HTML pages and show on the screen everything we indicate. Basically, the browser has two functionalities. First, it loads the HTML page, which means that acquire the content of the page. Our page can be or on our computer. In my case, the page is on my computer. In fact, when I open it, the address, it's not some specific URL, but it's my local, it's localhost, some port, and then the name of the page that I'm opening. Otherwise, the file can be hosted remotely in, and this is the case, for example, when we decide to use an external CSS file imported from an external provider, or for example, when we use Bootstrap and we don't download Bootstrap on our computer and we use an import from the Bootstrap website. This is a remote way to achieve the in that case the library, but we can access everything using this paradigm, this difference between local and remote. After the browser has acquired the page, it has to display this page. So there is also a rendering function, and the browser renders the content of the page. The browser interprets every element inside the document and display this element on the screen according to the indication that we are putting inside our code. Is it clear? Yes, let's see. Is it clear, browser work? Do you have questions so far? Great. Are concepts that you already know or are new concepts? Oh, new for me. Okay, great. But there is also someone that already knows it. Okay, about the browser, we will dive a little bit in deeper of it just to well understand its behavior, and this can prevent some errors while you are coding. But we will return on the browser later. Now, I want to talk about tag, the HTML tag, the basic element of a markup language. Other any of you can give me an example of another markup language which is not HTML? I just wrote the question on chat, but if you want to answer, okay, XML, great. Yes, XML, it's another markup language. Why markup language are so useful? Because they are both human readable, but also machine readable. So the browser can interpret what we are writing simply, but also we are going to write code understanding what we are writing, and also in an intuitive way, because when we code, we use at the end words that belong to our vocabulary, in a sense. Think that Tim Berners-Lee, when in 90s, didn't imagine that the HTML could become so popular, because he was not wondering that people could code their own HTML pages. But he was wrong, because in a markup language, it's way and way easier than write, for example, in JavaScript or other programming language. An HTML tag, it's something enclosed in angular brackets, and usually we use two tags, an beginning tags and a start tag and a end tag. The difference between these tags are that the start tag has just the angular brackets, while the end tag has also a slash after the first angular bracket. Tags are not case sensitive, so you can, for example, write this tag. This is a paragraph. You can write this paragraph also using uppercase or lowercase. Tags has two contributes. First one is the semantic that they give to the what we are representing. In fact, as I said before, this one P represents a paragraph. We will see other kind of tag, but we have, for example, heading, we have images, we have videos, we have tables, list. So with tag, we can give the semantic on what we are representing, and also the layout organization, because tag after tag, we create a structure that represents the skeleton of the application or the website. Two tags, a start tag and a end tag, create an element, and basically HTML pages are made of HTML elements, are made of tag that make HTML elements. We can put some text inside an HTML element. So in this case, in this example, we have a paragraph, and the element inside the element, of course, is the one in gray, and the text that should appear will be Web for College. When the browser does its work, it does not display the tag, but just display the element, the content of the tag, the content of the HTML element. And in doing this, then it applies the style and the way we decided to display this element on the page. This is done unless of errors, of course, because if, for example, you don't close a tag, or you do some typos error, you can also see, for example, these square brackets open and close, but basically you don't understand why there is. HTML has around 100 tags, and these tags has attributes, have attributes that change their function or look. So you can really put mostly everything inside your HTML page. And to start understanding and creating HTML, you just need 30 or 40 of this tag. These are some tags very important, but I want to show you the complete list on this very useful website. Wait a minute, that I'm going to switch screen. Okay. I hope that everybody see the screen again. This is HTML tags. There are basic tags. For example, most of these tags we saw in the example before. The first one, it was at line 1 to define the document type. Then this is the HTML tag defines the HTML document. Inside the HTML tag, we put other two elements, which are the head and the body. And please remind the order of this. The head comes first of the body. And of course, there is one head, and one body. The head define information about the document. We usually use the head to put the title of our page, to put some meta tags useful for our page, and we use also the head to import CSS. We will see then later why we use the head to do this. Then there are also other important tags. That is, for example, the heading one. They goes from heading 1, which is the bigger, to heading 6, which is the smaller. And headings usually are used for a title. Then we have paragraphs. Paragraphs just so simply text. These are special tag BR and HR because this kind of tag does not need a closing tag. You can just use like this, and the BR tag insert a break, while the HR insert a line that, let's say, separate the content on the page. And then in my first example that I show you, I also put a comment. You can write comment in HTML in this way. So opening angular bracket, then exclamation mark, dash dash, and then to close the comment, dash dash, closing angular bracket. Inside the comment, you can put everything, and everything that is inside a comment is not displayed on a web page. So if, for example, you put some explanation of the code you write, it's not displayed then on your web page. But be careful because since HTML tags ends with angular brackets, sometimes you can make mistake, and for example your comments end before you want to do that to finish. There are also other tags. These are the basic, but you can do very little with this. These tags basically are used from Wood reorg organization. I don't know if try to. Okay, this was not the file I was searching for. Maybe we have it. I had the link in next slides, but these are basically the very simpler simplest tags. And then we have other, of course, we have tags for formatting. I like to show you, these are tags useful for forms. So if you have to, I don't know, create subscribe to the newsletter or a login form, a registration form, these are tags useful. Frames are used, iframe, there are the last kind of frame supported in HTML, and they are useful to, for example, import YouTube videos and other media content. You can have images, and we will then explain a little bit about images, the difference between SVG and simple JPEG image. And I guess that you already know this difference as a designer, but I want to give you the definition from another point of view, from a program coding point of view. Then we have also audio and video. Links. Links are fundamental in the hypertext markup language. List, tables, and also style and semantics tags are really important. At this link, you can find all the tags supported in the last version of HTML. As we said before, with tags, we create an element, and an HTML element, we can put a text inside the HTML element. For example, in the paragraph, we wrote hello world, but an HTML element is also almost always a container. In fact, HTML pages are formed by a composition of nested containers, one inside the other. And maybe this is not clear now, but if we look at this example, that is the same as the one I put on bracket, you can see that I put inside the head element another element, which is the title. The same, no, I didn't do the same for the body, because hello world it's not tagged, let's say, but the HTML element, which defines the HTML document, has inside the two elements, the head and the body, and the head itself has another element inside it. And there are basically two kinds of elements, which are the block elements and the inline elements. Block element are the image here helps us a lot. Block elements occupies all the width of the page from left to right, and they also can occupy more than a row, while inline elements instead occupy just the space that they require. So if you add a text or you have, for example, this small box, the small box will not be stretched to fill all the screen width, but just the content. And these are two examples for you. This is the JS Fiddle, the program I was talking before to code, to do online code. And in this case, we have HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, and you can see here there is the output or what we wrote as code. And if you see the HTML code, it's really simple. I don't know if you can read my, maybe I can just zoom a little bit. Are you able to read my desktop? Okay, great. As you can see, there are this container, and container are put inside a div tag, and then inside this div tag I put a text. In this case, the container has a class, and we applied some CSS to this class. Of course, this is not a thing that I explained yet, but just to shows you how the div tag, which is a block element, occupies all the width of the page. While if we open the second example, which is for inline element, we see we inside a paragraph we put a lot of span, which are inline elements, and then the browser will display the elements on the same line. As you can see, the CSS here does not do anything special, just attribute, gives a color to each span. So let's close it, otherwise my PC will explode. So this difference between inline versus block element, it's for a graphical point of view, because of course it's a kind of different element if you want to occupy all the space of your web page, or just a little bit. Inline elements allows you to put more than one element on the same line, on the same row, while this not happen with block elements unless you specify something in your CSS. This was the slide before. Please be aware of the order. The head comes always first of the body. And then this is something a little bit specific of coding, of what happened inside the browser, but it's really useful to understand how the browser interprets HTML code. Our HTML page, the one that we usually write, it's represented inside the browser by an object, and this object is the domain object model. I'm really curious to know how many of you knows the DOM object model, domain object model. How many of you? Oh, great. And maybe you are the only one who knows the DOM. Okay. So as I said, every web page, okay, great. Every web page, it's represented by this object, and this document object has various properties. And using this document object, the browser can reach every element inside the page and apply rules to the page. But don't worry, because this object is just a tree. It's just another representation of our code. Since we use HTML tags, which create HTML elements, which are containers, we can put more than one container inside another. And what we create at the end is just a tree. So we have our document, our root element, which is the HTML. Then we put two other HTML elements, the head and the body. Inside the head, a title. Inside the body, for example, an heading and a paragraph. And this is how this HTML page gets bigger and bigger, but following a specific structure, which is a tree structure. And I don't know how many of you knows trees, but it's really useful structure in computer science, and we use in many fields. And usually, tree structure defines a parent-children relationship between objects. In fact, The first element, of course, is called the root of our tree, and then every element under the root may have children. So the element first is the parent, and then all the sub-elements are children of the first one. What advantages, what pros gives us using a tree structure? The fact that the structure is hierarchical. So, for example, if we access some specific property of a parent, we can extend this modification also to the children. A hierarchical structure gives us also the possibility to easy navigate inside the DOM and to easy also check if elements are correctly in the right place, because you can see where the tag opened and when the tag closed and what element are inside another element. So you can see if all the elements are put in the right position and in the same time displayed in the right order. And this is the complete flow of the complete flow that represents the browser job. The browser converts HTML and CSS into the document object model, and this is the document object model, as I said before, represent the HTML page in our computer memory, and then it combines the CSS and the HTML, and finally it displays the contents. So when there is the parsing of the HTML inside the HTML page, we also include some reference to the style sheet that we are going to use. And so also the style sheet is retrieved, and then it's combined, HTML and CSS, and then it's displayed. Of course, the browser can also receive other inputs from the user, and this is the case when we add JavaScript to our website, to our web page, because with JavaScript we introduce for the user a more interactive way for use the web page, and also with JavaScript we can code lots of things that speed up the creation of the web page, because if we don't use JavaScript, for example, you are supposed to write all the contents of the single text inside your web page, and if you have one web page, is okay, you can do it, but think to projects that has 10 pages, 200 pages, you cannot hard-code all the text of 200 web pages. It's not the way to code. One thing that is missing defining an HTML elements is the HTML attribute. Attributes are really important for HTML elements because extend what HTML elements can do, or how HTML elements can appear to the user. There are very many attributes to use. In this example, I just selected one attribute for the anchor tag. We saw anchor tag before. Anchor tag I used to represent links, and in this case the attribute name is what gives us the reference of the hyperlink. This stands for hyperlink reference. This is the value of the attribute. In this case, if we click on this link, we will open this page, and this is just the text that will appear as the link. HTML attributes, as we saw, are key value pairs. and separated by the equal symbol. The values are typically enclosed in quotation mark, and you can use quotation mark or single quotes. The Woodray school suggests to using double quote, quotation mark for attribute, and use lowercase for attribute names. Another rule to follow is that attributes are put inside the starting tag, and they are separated from the tag name by a space. So in this way, I'm using a attribute of kind ID. This is a kind of identification for this paragraph. ID usually are unique. So if you give an ID to some element, is because you want to apply some specific feature to this element. Otherwise, you can use classes. There are better for more than one element. Attributes, there are many kind of attributes. Here I reported the two most important one, core attributes and event attributes, but there are also in HTML5 the so-called data attributes that are kind of attributes that the user can define himself, and they are useful because extend the power for the user, because defining your attribute allows you to specify specific feature that you want to apply. But you can use with core attributes, and with event attributes you can do at least everything. Core attributes are, for example, the ID, class. We will talk later about the style, but also title can be core attributes. While event attributes are, for example, on click, on mouse over, on key down. There is specific difference between core attributes and event attributes. Usually in core attributes, what you put inside the element is text. You specify an ID, and inside the ID you put the name of the ID. Same as the class. Same as the style, that usually when you apply style, it's because you specify some property and some value for this property. Event attributes instead are triggered by an event, in this case on mouse click, and then react to this event applying a script. So what is expected in the event attribute? It's not normal text, it's not strings, but it's a script. It's JavaScript code or other kind of language. But how was saying before, style, it's important because style attribute nowadays is deprecated, because we import CSS file. We use CSS files, and we will see then we will see later why using CSS file is better than write the style inside our code. As I was saying before, here reported core attributes with an 8 are other core attributes very important. href was the attribute we used in the example before, that specified the URL for a link. Another really important attribute is the source attribute, that we use the source attribute if we want to import an image, for example, if you want to retrieve a file, and there is also another important attribute which is the alt. We usually use this attribute to specify the alternative content if an image cannot be displayed. Here I put lots of links for attributes, and this is the same site as before, and if you code, you will use a lot this this site for references and examples. And as you can see, attributes are these are elements divided by category. Then we have attributes, the global attributes. I selected just a few of them to put inside the slides. And then we have the events attributes. And if we see here, value, it's represented by script. And this was what I was saying before about JavaScript code to put inside this. Otherwise, the global attributes does not have this specification here. But these are links for all the attributes and for the standard and the event one. So you will find all 3 pages at these links. As core attribute, I want to stress these 2 because they are really important when you combine CSS then to HTML. These 2 attributes are the class and the ID, and the different I explained the different a little bit before. The difference is that I give an ID to a single element because I want to uniquely identify this element, while I'm giving a class attributes to more than one element. And this is the concept of class, and a set of people, a set of elements, but by the way, more than one. Of course, you can use also a class to define style for one element, but then it's your way of programming. If you use best practice, suggest to use ID for single element and then class for more than one. And CSS offers you selectors to highlight, to select each element based on the ID, or for example, the if it's a class. These are other 2 examples that I reported to you, a video and a audio. And this is how we can import in our HTML page. I don't know if you are planning to use video or audio effect for your website. By the way, you can just use the video or the audio tag, adding this controls, which is the attribute that allows us to display the control. And then there is another tag for source, and this tag has 2 attributes: source that specify where there is the file, and type that specify what kind of file is it. Usually inside this tag, inside this element, you can put more than one option in a way that if one of these files failed during loading, the browser will pass to the next one. But usually the first which is loaded is the one that you see. Okay, I want to end the HTML part is complete. I want to end this part with some best practice. Mainly are 2. First one, please, when you code, indent your code. It means that give the code the same structure that would have in your DOM, in your domain object model. Give the flavor of the tree structure while you are coding. Use spaces to highlight that one element is inside the other. In this way, you can understand better if you are putting one element outside the other, or if you are doing some mistake. And another thing, which is even more important than the first one, if you work in a group, is use comments, because any of us has his way of coding, his way of expressing, of calling variables, of writing code, and this is something which is not shared with other. So comments are important to express what you are doing, because if your colleague open your code and you, I don't know, have your idea of writing variables, of call variables, your colleague will not understand anything about your code. So comments are important to explain, for example, what a function does, or what an attribute is useful for, or for example, why you're applying some style to an HTML element. So hoping that about HTML it's all clear. I will write here if there are any question. While you write the question, if there are any, I want to show you some other examples of HTML pages, but without any CSS applied. Okay. This is the first one. Hope that all of you can read it. Let's try to analyze it. We have, as always, the version of the HTML we are going to use, then the root element, the head, inside the head, the title, and then inside the body, I put all the kind of elements. One heading, one paragraph, another heading but smaller compared to the upper one, another paragraph, a link, then I used images, a button, and for the button I applied the event attribute on click, and I also enclosed two kind of video in two different ways, and then list. This is just to give you an overview of the elements that we can put inside our page, and this is the way that they are shown to us. This is the image, and as you said, as you saw inside the image, I expressed a fixed width and a fixed height. So here is something which is fixed. Then I put a video from local. I downloaded this video. I don't know if you're which is really famous video. And then this is, for example, the iframe way to import video from YouTube. And I don't know if you had this experience before, but using importing YouTube video is really easy. I don't know what I'm opening right now, but if you click on share and then you use the embed function, you will have the HTML code to put inside your page directly. You can also specify when start the video. In this case, it starts at 1. These are represented by seconds. So if, for example, I put here 90, the video will start at minute 1.5. With the iframe, I just imported this video and I modified the 90 seconds. This is by the Sing movie. I don't know who saw it. One of my favorite films. And what other? And then I put other two lists, an unordered list and ordered one. So I don't know. I have now a few questions for you to see if you catch some concepts about HTML. I saw that no one of you answered to any question, so I guess that there are no. But now see how many of you wants to do this quiz. How many of you will participate to the quiz so I can count how many questions should arrive. Just answer with a thumbs up, and then the total will be the amount of answer that I'm going to wait when we do the quiz. I give you 1 minute to answer. So we are 27 plus 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, so 38. Let's see if we arrive at the half of 38, 19. Maybe yes, maybe no. Okay, 15. 15, I like this number. So let's start. No, 16, okay. I will do like this. I will put the number of the question. So I will write question 1 and then just the number of the answer. So 1, 2, and 3. And then we use the same method that we are using. So thumbs up to express our answer. First one is really simple question. So let's start. Question 1, answer 1, 2, or 3. Okay, fine. This was easy. And okay, the right answer is the answer number 2. Home tool markup language is not the correct answer. Sorry. Question number, oh, don't worry. Question number 2. Let's start. Here the options are 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Which character is used to indicate an end tag? So, okay, there were 2 answers at number 2. Now they are changed. The right answer is the number 3, of course. What distinguish an end tag from a start tag is the slash. The number 2 was wrong because the start angular bracket is the same both for the starting tag and the closing tag. So question this was the right Maybe I can highlight it so that you have it. Question number 3. HTML comments start with start angular bracket, exclamation mark, dash dash, and end with dash dash closing angular bracket. True or false? Let's write it. Question 3. Thanks. Right. The answer, okay, spoiler, the answer was true. Let's do question number 4. Choose the correct HTML element for the largest heading. We want the largest heading. Okay. We have 14 answer for the answer number 4, which of course is the right answer. Heading 1 is the biggest of the heading. H6 is the smallest, and then heading I guess is not a tag, and head instead is used for other purpose to specify the head element of our page. And as I said before, in the head we put meta tag and external links that are useful for our project. So last question for this HTML part, which is, what is the correct HTML for creating an hyperlink? One, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, 12, 13. Can I ask who answered false at question 3? If there is an error or someone really think that the question number 3 were false. I'm putting also my reaction here. Gianluca's Gobbi. No, if you don't want to say anything, don't worry. Okay, 15 answers to question number 5, and the right answer is the number 1, of course. So congrats. most of you, no, all of you complete the test without errors. I'm happy of this. So now a little break should be planned. I don't know what you want to do. I can continue and maybe we can finish a little bit early than midday, or we can have 5-minute breaks and then restart. I just write here continue talking break. Thumbs up for your favorite option, and then okay. Oh, one continue talking. Okay, at the end, the option that will have more thumbs up will win. We have 6 against 4 for the break. Okay. So first answers to the two question were 21, 24. Now we have just 15 questions, so I guess that it's break time. But in the introduction, I wrote 15 minutes. I want to do a shorter break because I'm afraid not to finish with CSS contents. So I think that 5-minute break should be okay for everybody. We can drink a glass of water, smoke a cigarette in 5 minutes. So we can stop here and restart at 5 to 11. Okay, so more or less 7 minutes. I will stop the recording of the lesson, but I will continue to share the okay. Second part of this lesson is devoted to CSS. CSS is the missing block to have a good-looking web page without having a special interactive element inside of it. With CSS, we can achieve really great styles for our web page, and let's think that you can also do some crazy people did it. I don't remember the name of the developers, but they made a version of Super Mario, which is completely running using CSS. No JavaScript, no code, but just CSS and animation using CSS. I want to ask, because maybe HTML was not your domain, but maybe you are you have a better knowledge of CSS. I asked it before, but I want to redo the poll. Let's see the answer before. 12 of you answered that knows CSS, and 6 said no. Okay, we have less people now, and 3. Okay, some of you know CSS and some of you don't. CSS, as I said before, is the part of the of your page that gives the style. And before CSS was written inside the HTML code. This brought some problems in the readability of the code, so has been decided as a best practice to usually import external CSS files. And when we use the import function to get some file, some external file, as I said before, for the HTML page, this file can be in our machine, on our machine, or somewhere on remotely on a server. But the way we are going to import it in our project is the same, and we will see how it works. Here the definition, and CSS stands for cascading style sheets. So there are sheets for the style, and cascading is the way that the kind of rules are applied, and we will see later why. And CSS, of course, is the standard for style HTML elements. This is the reason why we are using to import external CSS instead of writing CSS code inside the HTML element. Try to figure out, and let's see the example here. This was the code of my simple web page with videos and images, and this code is quite readable, but try to imagine if we start putting inside this, together with this attribute, also styles. And styles can be everything, can be font size, font color, background color, text color, dimensions, property of the screen. With CSS, you can also manage the different kind of devices you are going to use. So you will have different style sheets for different kind of device. We will see later with the responsivity of the web page. So try to imagine if we put all these elements inside this web page. The effect is that it becomes unreadable, and an unreadable page is unusable for the developer, and becomes really hard to change content and to understand if there are errors, where there is the errors. Another property, another feature of CSS is that it usually overrides a specific style that is given if there is an instruction later that involve the same element. So if, for example, we have two rules that target a paragraph, and the first rule, for example, set the color black, and second, set the color red, the color that we will see would be red. So it's also important the order of the commands that we are going to use, and if we put all these commands inside our HTML code, inside the HTML tags, and then we have this kind of overwrite, it's also difficult to retrieve the error. So what has been decided is to use links, this kind of tag, to embed external CSS that can be or local, or in this case I think that it's local as well. This is a partial URL, so so we don't know the complete URL, but if it's relative, maybe it's something which is local. Also, here is expressed a full path for the CSS file that usually are put in a style folder or a folder called CSS, just to be clear also for what concerns the structure of your web page and your website. Because another important thing is not to put your files, everything in your project, but use folder to organize it. A folder for the scripts, a folder for the style sheets, a folder for all the other HTML pages, and then the home page and the main page, which is outside and is served by the browser. What are the advantages of using CSS? CSS describes how the elements has to be displayed on the screen, and allows us to save a lot of work and not get crazy styling our HTML elements. Another important aspect of CSS is that we can define one style sheet that can be applied for more than one page, and this is also important when, for example, we define a property for the body of our HTML page that would be applied to all the other pages. Just the important thing is to put in every page that we are going to use the import of the style sheet that we want to use. CSS can be used also to create animation. We will see some example in a moment. And I don't know. No, we have before we have the history. The history of CSS is shorter than the HTML one. There are just 3 versions of the CSS, and the latest version was. I think that this date is wrong. I don't remember now the exactly date, but the last version, that is the one that we currently use, supported twice as the properties that the second version. I think that the third version is a version that was about half of 2010 maybe. I'm not sure. I have to check, but I will upload the updated slides with the correct date. These are the example I was talking before that shows you how with just CSS you can do really great things. This is a project called Zen Garden, and I swear, guys, this is just HTML page done with CSS. I don't know how many of you knows this project, CSS Zen Garden. It's full of other kind of effects. For example, this structure can be organized changing the CSS. For example, can be like this. It's exactly the same page, but with a different CSS. And for example, we can use this other effect, which is still. Still was the same. Let's try mid-century modern, which is this one. It's unbelievable if you think that all these things are made just using CSS and no one line of JavaScript or other frameworks, like for example Bootstrap. Let's try Fontaine Keys. Oh my God, I'm selecting always the same. Okay, this is another one. Robot name Jimmy. Let's see. Fine. And right clicking on this page, you can you can inspect the source code of the page. And this is important because we can see here that there is a style sheet for this kind of attribute we will see later, but it's really useful. And then there is then the href to the CSS. Let's try to click it, and this is the CSS of this web page. And as you can see, it's really big CSS. But with just this CSS file, you can manage all the interaction of that web page without touching, without knowing any line of JavaScript. Of course, you have to have a basic knowledge of HTML, but at this moment we have understood how HTML goes in pairs with CSS. Okay, we were talking about CSS without knowing the syntax, and so now we are going to understand how we can define CSS rules. CSS rules work this way. We have to select the elements or the elements we want to change, and then we put inside a declaration block, which is expressed by these brackets. We put a set of declarations. These declarations follow the property value schema as the attributes, but while the attributes works with the equal sign, CSS declaration works with colon and ends with semicolon. So you define a property. This property belongs to the HTML element you have selected. In this case, sorry, in this case, we have the color property of the heading one, and we are setting this color to orange. And for example, we are telling the browser that we want to display this heading at the center of the HTML page. So the selector, we have many kind of selector, and we will see later how selector work. Instead, for the declaration block is standard, always start and ends with this kind of bracket, curly bracket. And for property, every element, every HTML element has its set of property, and values can be different but always related to the kind of property. We cannot assign a color in pixel, for example. We have to assign the different kind of codification for colors that we will see later, but we have to be coherent while using property and a value assigned a property. One important thing about CSS is that if you have any error, CSS does not prompt you with an alert or your code is broken and you cannot visualize anything. No, if you have error in your CSS, just the browser will jump the instruction where the error is and will continue styling all your web page. So this means that it's difficult sometimes to find a kind of error because it's not highlighted from the browser or from the compiler. But and this is also the reason why we decided to put all this code inside an external file and not to have embedded in the HTML element, because try to figure out to find an error which is not highlighted in a code which is full of other names and other tags, elements, and also attributes, which can be misleading with the CSS. And another important thing that can lead to error, this happened to me sometime, is that in the standard it's used the US spelling, so you are supposed to write color and not color as English way. The same for center instead of center, but this is just 2 examples. You will find, and it's also different the way you insert comments. Comments work like, for example, JavaScript, and not for as Markdown language with the other kind of symbols. And here there is the whole reference for our CSS properties, and I don't know if we have a way to aggregate them. No, we don't. So I just scroll the page and I show you how many property we have for the elements. I think that there are more than 100 properties, and this gives you lots of power while coding. Of course, one important element while we are coding, while we writing an HTML page, is the development tools that the browser offer to us. I closed the example before. I want to open one of these. Okay, and now let's see what happened if I open the inspector. This is called the inspector, the dev tools provided by Google. I put here the instruction to open the inspector on your PC. Windows PC works with F12. Otherwise, for Mac users, you have 2 ways. Just right click on the page and select inspect, and it will open this window, or you can just click these commands, which are option plus command plus E. This is for Mac user, and it will open the development tool as well. Why the development tool is so useful? Sorry guys. Why this they are so useful? Because selecting one element allows you to see the style of the element and to see also which rules are override. And so this is what concerns the development tool, and this is how we can apply CSS. CSS can be applied to a tag, of course, and this was the way we were doing before. For example, to select the heading, we just wrote heading 1. And so we applied the CSS rule to all tags heading 1, to all elements heading 1. We can apply CSS to a class. And while I was speaking about class and ID, I was referring often to CSS because they are really important, these 2 attributes for the CSS, for the selectors, because we can select a class and apply some style to the class, or we can select just one element and apply the specific style to the element. Order in CSS, it's really important. Not a case that it's called cascading style sheets. There is a specific order for what concern the elements. There is, for example, tag, then class, then ID, and then the inline element. In case of conflict, is always assigned the last command, as I was saying before. if we have, for example, two paragraph selector, and one is color, for example, red, and the other color is black, the final color will be the color of the last instruction. But in any case, we can express our priority for what concern the order of CSS rules using this kind of notation. We can put close to the property value, this attribute exclamation mark important. Exclamation mark important will overwrite any occurrence of the, for example, if we have the same as before, a selector for a tag paragraph, which is first with a text color red and then with the text color black, we are supposed to see the color black. But if we put important together with text color red, then we will see that the color is red. Of course, you can use as many important as you want, so it may happen that you do some error and you put important to same instruction, and in this case it's applied the same rule as before, so the last one it's the one who win. Another thing that we were telling before, that I was telling before to you, is that HTML gives the structure of the page, but it gives a hierarchical structure to the page. In fact, we can have parents, we can have children. Of course, if we have more than one parents or more than one element on the same level, we have siblings. So we can work, and I was saying before that it's really important this, because allows us to apply CSS rules to a parent and see that these rules are applied to all the children of the parent. There are different ways to express this. For example, if I want to apply a rule to a descendant, in this case, I want to apply that background color to all the paragraphs that are descendant of the div tag. It means all the tag, all the paragraph descendant. While if you are using the this other symbol, we are expressing the child selector. So if we use the closing square bracket, we are expressing the child selector, and which means that we are going to select all the paragraphs that are directly children of the container. Or we can we want to add a style to all the elements that are at the same level, and this is the case of sibling. In this case, we can use a plus to express that we want that all the tags following immediately after the div tag have this background. Or we can select general siblings, which are all tags be siblings of a div tag. As you can see, there are 4 ways to select elements which are connected. Another thing is the way that we can use selector in CSS. For example, there are many kinds of selector depending on what we want to select. In case of a class, where I can write this, maybe on my bracket, just put I didn't implement any class inside the HTML, so I just writing here a few examples. For example, if I want to change a class and the class name is I don't know, property body, this is the way to select a class. So dot and the name of the class. If we have an ID instead, we use the hashtag. So try, for example, the ID is Pippo. So I select Pippo using the hashtag, and then as the same no recent file. Oh my God. And then as the same. Okay. So now let's move to the another important aspect when you style your elements, which is the box model. I don't know how many of you knows this model, but I think that people that said that knows HTML have explored this aspect. Let's see a little bit how it works. Now here we don't have CSS style, so I have to open this. And the box model allows us to here define which is the structure of a element, because one element it's not just the tag and its content, but as a specific structure. The content is the one expressed with a width and a height, but we have also padding around our element. We have border around our element, and then we have margin. So it's like an onion layers. The content is the one which is the inner one, and then we have padding, border, and margin. These properties can be, of course, be accessed using CSS. In this case, we have, for example, we can express just one of these. For example, I want to set the padding top at 20 pixels, so I want to give more space between the border and the content, for example. Or I can just set each of them in this way and in any order, or I can use this very useful notation that allows me to put all these values inside one line. But be careful, because this value has to be put clockwise. Clockwise means following the time, following the time. So if we have, we start from the top, then we have right, then we have bottom, and then we have left. So top 20, right 10, bottom 20, and then left 10. Width and height are properties that always come together with the display property. Display property that we will see in the next slide. But in this case, we can give more than one unit of measure to these values, the height and the width. We can put in auto mode, which means auto adaptation with respect to the content. We can express a percentage, we can express the number of pixels, or we can express the EM, which is a relative unit of measure that 1 EM is currently the current font size. And as I was saying before, together with the width and the height, we have the display property, which allows us to display the element as a block, as an inline block, as just inline, or display none. Of course, this property is embedded inside each element, and we saw it before. We saw the difference between block elements and inline elements, but also we can change this applying CSS and overriding the rule. So we can put more than one div together with another, or for example, we can put one span element, one anchor tag element, one in a row, just using the specific style that gives the property to the element. So for example, if we want an inline element, we can use display inline. If we want to put some more than one block together, we can use inline block. Or if we want just a block, we can use just block. And in this case, display block, not regarding the kind of width we are going to express, will occupy all the width of the will not occupy all the width. We'll put one element for that line. We were talking also about color, and we have said that we must be coherent what the kind of value that we want to express based on the property. So for example, if we want to set a color, a background color, or any of this aspect, we can use 6 different format. The one I use the most are color name. If you know the name that you want to use, for example, black, red, yellow, white, there are lots of supported color, and you can find them at this link. Also, if you are using a good text editor like Visual Studio Code, or you are using some plugin in Visual Studio Code, you have a suggestion of color that you can input. Otherwise, there is the XML codification for colors, or we can use RGBA that express also the value of opacity, or just RGB. I guess that you as designer knows these things better than me, so I'm going fast on this. And then we have also this other format, which I have to be honest, I never use it. I always use the X value or the RGB value. And in case I know the kind of color I want, and I want a standard color, I use the color name property. And this is another important thing, that style does not mean usable or beautiful. This is something that we can apply also back to the example that we were showing. Very beautiful page, but it's not so useful because it doesn't allow me to do anything, and often pages are made with errors, not for persons like us, for example, that we don't have problems, cognitive problems, for example, problems at our site, but for example, I don't know the word in English, but persons who have daltonism, maybe it's the word. You have to be careful with them, or we have to be careful to put a light color on a white background. Here, for example, I like on our website, exactly. Exactly. These are, for example, 10 things to avoid if you want to if you don't want to overuse CSS. For example, green, yellow, purple on a green background, light colors on a white background, as I was saying before. Think this pinky text here, or rainbow with text on it. I don't know. Another things that it's not suggestible is black background with red text on it. This is so 90s with pinky, and oh my god, multiple colored boxes. I mean, this was the way that the first website were made, because there was no standard, there was no everyone could do the things that he wants. So these are the two examples, and here, for example, there is another. This is a page that collects all the old websites, and here you can see really the first pages on the web. And if you want to, if you are sad and you want to laugh, visit that page. And Google provide us a color system in the material design section, gives us suggestion on how to use colors and how to put colors together. Let me close this. Let's see this. Okay, this is a thing that you, I think, already know, the difference between vector and raster images. Basically, raster are made of pixel, and they, if you zoom on a raster image, you will see when you reach a certain point, you will see the pixel. While if you are working on a vector image, that is an image made following mathematical equations, the image will auto-adjust every time you zoom, so you will not see the pixel of the image. Of course, vector images are better than raster images for a quality point of view. You can have more than one problem to import an SVG image compared to a raster one, but the final effect will be better with a SVG image. In this case, we have a tool that allows you to convert a JPEG to an SVG or APS vector image, and this is the difference that the tool offers to us. Okay, another important aspect for CSS is the font manipulation. We can modify, we can edit font style, font weight, font size, how much space to put from between lines, the kind of font family we are going to use. And this is the, I think, the last. Okay, no, there are other three important concepts to see. The one is this, the media query. The media query allows us to express CSS rules to be applied for a specific kind of device or for a specific kind of content we want to display. For example, there is the, I don't know, on Safari, on iPhones, there is the reading mode, which is a mode that allows you to extract only for the readable content, and the way that this page is managed from CSS is using the media query. A media query allows you to target a specific media type and specify a specific behavior for the CSS code. And this is really important for the responsivity of our website. There is in this Woodre School website, there are many examples that shows you what kind of media types you can target. For example, print, screen, or if you want to for speech. And this is what concerns the media query. Then for what concerns the best practice in the responsivity, first thing I suggest to you is to put this tag inside the head of your document, because these tags tells that the point of reference of your that the CSS have is one-to-one with the pixel. If we put initial scale 1, the viewport tag allows us to manage the dimension of the screen that we have, and if we, for example, the width property to device width, it will match the screen width in device independent pixels. And if we put this initial scale equal to 1, we establish a one-to-one relationship between CSS pixel and device independent pixel. So putting this meta tag inside the head allows us to make this comparison and allows you to work better than with CSS. Secondly, as other suggestion, not to use large fixed with elements. In general, avoid fixed size, because they don't adapt to the different dimension of the screen. Content should not rely on a particular viewport width to render well, in fact. And we use CSS media query for this. We can specify for different dimension of screens, different width. And if we open this link on this page that I really suggest to you, I guess that you already know, there are all the kind of media query that you can insert to manage all kind of devices, from wearables to Google Pixel, Galaxy phones, Windows phones, really every kind of mobile device that can support a web page. We have CSS as another important feature, which is the pseudo class and the pseudo element. This allows us to target specific behavior of one element or one class. For example, if we, in this way, we selected an anchor tag and we are targeting the link class of the tag of the anchor, and we are setting, for example, this kind of color. On over, it means that when the mouse pass on the link, the color will change. And we have also pseudo element, which means that we can access also specific values of the element. In this case, if I want to highlight the first letter in red, or I want to add the first letter bigger than the others, I can use pseudo element to do this. One last thing is the animation in CSS. Animation in CSS are done putting one reference inside the element that we want to animate. This reference is composed of the name of the animation, the duration, the delay. If we want to iterate this animation and the kind of direction that we give to the animation. And of course, and then we can, the name of the animation has to be the same that we express after the keyword keyframes. We need a snail and then the word keyframes and then the name of the animation. For example, this first animation will go from a red color to a yellow one. This other animation in a fourth step will be red, then yellow, then blue, and then green. Here we have, okay, you will see here animation, how it works. I want to show you some cooler example for animation. I put this example here. Maybe it's one of these code pen. maybe this. No, this is ping pong. It's done using a simple animation. You can use JS Fiddle. It was the site I was on before, but there is also this one, codepen.io, that allows you to write online code. I will write on the chat codepen.io. Let's put the complete link. Okay. So this is an animation for ping pong. I have to, so this is another one. Of course, then if you see how CSS is done here, you become crazy in understanding it, and the error that these programmers have done is not to comment the code, so it's ununderstandable, and it's also really complex. And okay, let's try with this. Okay, this was the code I want to show you. These are animation triggered with button, and in this animation you can park a car. As you can see, every button after the click has changed this color, and this is another property that we can set using CSS. And we manipulate the car, and we move the car inside the page to finally reach the right position. So saying that, we have ended also the CSS part. We have still 15 minutes, so I want to do the test with you, do the quiz with you, and shows you a little bit of HTML applied with CSS. In another example I found for you. I'm going to leave you useful links to go in deep with HTML concepts, CSS concepts, but you have also other links during the slides. Okay, now let's try to open the other file, which is not this. Okay, I don't know if you already know these sites. I took this example from the web, so I think that you can easily retrieve it, but it's really a simple example that shows you just an HTML page without a style. This is the page. Don't mind the dimension of this page, but try to focus on how the content is displayed in the right order, but without style. If we instead open this other example, which is the completed, and as you can see here, there is an import of CSS. Let's see what happened. Okay, and as you can see, the page is better than it was previous. Okay, now it's loaded the same page. Thanks, bracket. But the important thing is that before this footer does not exist, or better, it exists but without style. Also the header, and also the main content. We can see inside the code the main difference between the just HTML code and the completed. And as you can see, there is no difference because all the work is done by the CSS file. The CSS file apply style to the body, style to all the paragraph, to the header. This is a way to select more than one HTML elements. They are using the notation to select all the descendant of the article, or all the paragraph descendant by the article as this CSS applied, these blocks applied. There is also one CSS applied using the selector tag, the ID selector tag, and we have also CSS applied to a specific property of the anchor, which is the over. So let's see how it works. In this case, we have before selected the element, and then all the element descendant and this property that belongs to this element set to this color. So let's see now using the inspector if we can see the same thing. So in the first was this image. As we can see, this image does not have an ID, so maybe it's the other one, the image with the ID. Okay, this is the ID of the image. Maybe I have to zoom a little bit because you don't really have nothing. So this is the plate, the ID for this image, and in the style window here, you can see that plate image has this kind of property set. This is a font family applied to all the elements of the page, and there are also other inherited properties from parents. In this case, since image is inside article, it inherits some property of also the article element. So for what concern CSS is all. I don't know, we can just do our quiz in 10 minutes and then I will say you hello, because I have another lesson starting at a quarter past 12. So quiz time. As before, names of thumbs up are the answer that I'm going to expect every time. So please answer and see how many of you are still present and they're not sleeping. Okay. In the meantime, I just you already know the okay. You already know the answer. Right. Just wait a few minutes, Maria, and I want to do the same thing as before. I will write the question, all the 4 answers, and then you vote the answer. Just a thing I want to know is that since we have to do another lessons together, I want to know if today's lessons was okay, if I highlighted something that you already know, if you want that next lesson will be focused on some specific concept, feel free to ask and feel free to leave your feedback, because they are important for me to better organize next lesson. And then come on, we can do the quiz. So question 1. The first part, which means the HTML one, right? Or also the, okay, CSS, not so clear. Okay, yes, quits are just an idea that came up to me in these days, and I didn't have the time to organize a better way to perform this kind of quits. I knew that you use the VooClap in the conversational agent lesson. And it's a wonderful tool. I don't know, maybe for the next lesson I will not put any quits, or I will not use the chat, but simply a Google form or VooClap and Kahoot, or this kind of technologies, this kind of platforms. Okay, Martina, so you're suggesting me to use really basic examples. Okay, but also the one related to CSS was taken by internet, by a website, but it's really clear the way that code is written. Since we have few time, I didn't get in the detail of that code, but if we want the next lesson, we can start from that code and then add Bootstrap to it, and also JavaScript. So okay that you express this kind of feedback. I agree with you. Yeah, usually examples taken by the web are of course made by other people, so they do not meet exactly what you are looking for. It was a little too quick, but I understand, a matter of time. Okay, I understand you. Lessons was really a rush also for me, but explain these concepts in 3 hours is practically impossible. In fact, my goal was to give you a flavor of what is HTML, what is CSS, what you can do combining them, and what is a really great output that you can achieve using them. But of course, if we have to go into the details of all the attributes, all the values, and all the kind of things that you can do combining CSS and HTML, we need a course for this. Maybe there is one with microphone open. I don't know. But okay, Priscilla, I like your feedback too. Thanks for these feedbacks, because they are really useful and allows me to better prepare next lessons. By the way, first question was about what does CSS stand for, and 13 of you answer with the right question, the right answer, so great. I don't know if we are going to end these quiz, but you can use them to practice. So let's do question number 2. Question number 2 is, what is the correct HTML for referring to an external style sheet? Okay, I see that everybody of you agree on the first answer, and in fact the right answer is the first one. Great. Third question, where in an HTML document is the correct place to refer to an external style sheet? The head, the body, at the end of the document. Question 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, guys, I will end with this, with the correct answer of this question, which was the head section, of course, not the body, not the end of the document, because if we do like this, then the CSS is, the browser is unavailable to apply CSS to all the document. So you have to put at the end of the document in a way that then parsing all the DOM, the browser can apply CSS rules to all the elements. So the right question was the head, and you have other 4 questions to answer. I will leave this question to you. Maybe we can see the answer next lesson. We will see in the 8th of May. I'm now stopping the recording.